And we're live. Welcome everybody to tonight's broadcast. I'm going to be talking about a few things today. I'm going to be talking about diesel maintenance. I'm going to be talking about how to troubleshoot a faulty injector, specifically on a N14 Cummins. Now, this is a pre-emission engine. You don't really see this one too often, but this is something that I'm going to be covering today. I hope everyone's doing well this evening. I'm also going to be answering some questions at the end of the broadcast. If you would like to go ahead and send a super chat, I believe super chat is available, so you can hit us up on super chat. Let me make sure everything's online correctly. Again, I hope everybody's doing well. It's been a while since I've done a live broadcast, but I'm here and I want to welcome everybody. As I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about maintenance. I'm going to be giving you updates on the trucking industry. There's a few articles that I've read that seem very interesting. I want to share that information with you guys. Today, as I mentioned, is going to be troubleshooting an N14 Cummins. And I want to start off with a story. Let me know if everybody can hear me well. Let me know how I'm coming through on the stream. I'm trying to get a live feed now. Okay, looks a little off. Let me know where everybody's watching from. Make sure my chat's working over here. She's my chat. Thank you, man. Thank you, James, for joining us. I noticed that the color is off on this. Let me change this real quick. Let me adjust this real quick. Thank you for everybody that's joining us today. I'm going to turn this contrast down just a bit, see if that helps out with the color. I'm going to be talking about troubleshooting injector on an M14. I'm trying to mess with this color, guys. It don't look like the color's looking too well. Northern California. Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad the audio is coming in good, but I noticed that the picture is a little off. But we'll work through it. I really don't like how the video is coming through. It looks kind of... let me see if I can adjust a little bit more. And then we'll get started with this. All right, we're going to just go with it. So let me start with a story, okay? So the N14 Cummins is an older engine. Now, this particular engine is built by Cummins, and it's pre-emissions. It's a very good engine, very strong engine. I remember these are the types of engines that were coming in our shop very often. We didn't see... This was, as I mentioned, it was pre-emission, so this is when the Series 60 and the M14s were really just populating the highways. So this was a really common engine to work on, very basic engine. It doesn't have an overhead cam as the modern engines do. This particular cam is located towards the center of the engine, so there's rollers, followers, push rods to push the valves and create the engine, of course, get the engine operating correctly. So when you have push rods and you have a cam that's not overhead, then now you have more components that are susceptible to failure. Now, with this particular story that I wanted to share, it is about an N14 Cummins, and what I like about this engine is it has, just like all the newer engines, or I'm sorry, no, the older engines, they have connections for each injector. And this particular engine has an injector on the rocker box cover, which is very accessible. All you got to do is just unplug it. So it's really easy to kind of troubleshoot a faulty injector, and you can hear a miss going on. So you would disconnect an injector and see if you would hear a miss. Now, in this particular story, I pulled the plug open and there was a miss. So, or there wasn't a difference in a miss. So that's how you would troubleshoot it. You disconnect an injector, and if you don't hear an audible difference in the misfire, then of course, then that's going to be your faulty injector. So we went ahead and replaced the injector. Okay, it's the injector. Went ahead and got that replaced, and turn the engine back on, engine's back on, everything's back up and going, and we still have a fault. We still have the error that was going on, and this was years ago, as I mentioned, when Cummins, when the N14 were really just all over the highways. There was everywhere you went, that's where it was. So on this particular setup for the N14, I'm going to give you a diagram here. Let me switch over to this screen here. So on this diagram here, you can see that there is a connection. Of course, this is the harness. This is going to be the actual engine harness. This is a simplified image so that you can understand better how the ECM is controlling these injectors, and the way they just basically send a signal to the injector to activate, open, and close, and there's a return. So in this particular code that came up, this is a recent code that came up here in our shop, was a 325 fault code for an injector, which is basically saying the injector is dead. So in this particular case, whenever we disconnect the outer harness, and I did in this particular story that I'm mentioning years ago, there's a pigtail that's off of the camshaft housing that goes to the injector, which is kind of just a small pigtail, and you can see it here. Now, this is an additional wiring that goes to this injector. Now, if you don't inspect this, and the correct troubleshooting procedures are going to be step by step, basically telling you, hey, check the ohms on the wiring harness, check the ohms, and inspect the solenoid, inspect the injector, inspect the wiring. So whenever you're doing that and you're following these steps to inspect the wiring, you're basically canceling out that it's going to be a bad wire, a scuff wire, or a wire that's being rubbed on, anything, a bad corrosion, especially with these higher mileage engines. I mentioned it in some of my other broadcasts about how important it is to check the wiring harnesses, because they're just exposed to so much heat. They're wrapped around the entire engine. They're exposed to the outer elements. Of course, they're in the engine bay, but they're getting exposed to the heat. They're directly contacted with the engine, so it gets very hot. Over time, that wiring and that installation can only last so long, and it becomes brittle. And in these cases, in this particular fault where this injector was not getting a return signal, so back to the diagram, I'll show you here. Back to the injector circuit. This engine harness is sending a signal to the injector, and then there's a return. As you can see, there's a return. So you have the electrical supply, which is going to be, most of these signals are low voltage, 5 volts. So you got a 5 volt going to, and then the return. So basically, in this particular code, it's saying no current detected at number 6 injector, return pin number 4 of the actuator harness. So this is explaining we're not getting a return voltage signal back to the ECM when we send it out. So most of the time it is a faulty injector, but we want to check out the harness and test the harness and follow these troubleshooting steps. The series that I've just been recently releasing with the shorts about the best diagnosis tools that you can use. This is why I mostly recommend using OEM software, because you're going to have access to these type of manuals. These types of manuals, going back to them, are very in-depth. You're going to get fault code information. You're going to be able to get access to any of these manuals. So this is an older manual. So this is an N14. You don't see these engines very often. They're non-emissions engines. They've been replaced by the most modern Cummins modern engines that they have out, which is they're not as reliable as an older N14, but these troubleshooting steps are pretty much going to be the same. With modern engines, it comes a little bit more easier when it comes to troubleshooting these types of faults, because now that we can, instead of physically unplugging injectors to see if we hear an audible fault. Now we actually have the computer turning the injector off. We also have the computer doing idle balance tests, which is basically an idle balance test is measuring the amount of fuel is added or subtracted to each cylinder. This is how the ECM is able to decide whether or not we have a faulty cylinder. And not all the time is an idler balance test or a faulted idle balance test going to say exactly it's going to be an injector. It could be a scuff liner. It could be something going on with that liner kit that's causing that. But back to the idle balancer test, basically it's just measuring the amount of fuel it's adding or subtracting to balance out the engine. So the ECM is always trying to balance and create a smooth idle. So in these types of tests with these modern engines and the software that they're able to offer, we are able to test these types of engines more accurately. Even with the modern Cummins, the modern ISX15 or X15, there's a performance test that we can do. Also with the Detroits and Volvos, there's always different performance tests that they run, which basically just runs different tests throughout the injectors to kind of tell or give you an idea whether or not if you're having a faulty injector or just a communication issue in between the medium. And the wiring harnesses or these data links or these injector harnesses, they have combined themselves compared to the N14. The N14 had a single pigtail for each injector. Most of the modern engines are using a harness that is one connector coming out of the rocker box, and it supplies all injectors. Now, in these particular types of setups, you also need to check for continuity. When you're checking for continuity within the harness, you're testing to see what the ohmage is, the resistance. There is also always a specific tolerance or an allowed resistance in a wire from the time it was produced and the length. All this is calculated when measuring your ohms and measuring the continuity. So most of the time you're going to have low resistance in a wiring harness, but in some cases where you have multiple connections connecting to different sub harnesses, a lot of these modern engines had to add these additional ECMs. When it comes to ACMs is what I actually meant to say, when they're adding the additional ACMs or also the communications to the CPCs. These are all just different harnesses they have to connect to, and these connectors are just additional points that can fault out when it comes to the engine trying to communicate, ECM trying to communicate to anything, whether it's the CPC or ACM. Now with the more modern engines, they're creating the computers to be less how you would say tamper-proof, or more tamper-proof, and less being able to be tampered with because of all the emissions controls that they've been adding to these particular engines. And the reason why they do that is because of the deletes that's been going on. Yeah, you did hear harness, and it was actually, we did test on that particular fault. I can give you, we did some step-by-steps on that particular job, and with the N14 job that I was just sharing here, we just had a current N14 job come in, and this is what was going on is they had a faulty injector. So a lot of this software and a lot of this information that I've been sharing with you guys online, when it comes to software, I see kind of the backlash. Oh, well, you're just saying that or whatever. Well, I've tried software kind of like J Pro, for example, or these other aftermarket packages that can deal with all the different engines. And I'm gonna tell you, as a technician myself, and as long as we've been working on trucks, the best diagnosing software that we can recommend is going to be for each particular engine. You're going to have that type of software. If you guys got any questions, hit us up on today's chat. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking more about maintenance. Right now, I'm talking about the troubleshooting on injectors. I'm going to be giving you some insights on what I've read about the trucking industry. They're suspecting a boom that's coming up. So stay tuned. If you guys have any questions about your truck or any questions or you want to try to diagnose something over here, make sure to ask us here or ask me here. Hit us up on Super Chat if Super Chat's available. Your donations are very appreciated to keep this channel moving. James Smith is on here, joining us here, is what I meant to say here. Make sure to hit that like and share this information, guys. If you have anybody that's in this industry and this information can be useful to them, make sure to share it. So I've been reading, I read pretty often, and I try to stay up to date with what's going on with the industry. I try not to read too much into just the kind of antics of trying to grab people's attention and try to scare people. But there was an interesting article that talked about how, trucking has been plagued with just a lot of different things in the past few years. When it begun with the COVID-19, I know this is just a lot of things that people don't like to hear when it comes to. Let me get a sip of this coffee. Thanks for everybody that's joining us today. I know a lot of people don't like to hear about what COVID-19 is, and whether you believe it or not, it did create a disruption in our industry when it comes to. First, it just pretty much cut off a lot of the supplies. It shut us down. So there was a lot of people that didn't move product that at that time, which created just a huge backlog. A lot of the retailers, which are the people that are in charge of buying all the items for stocking, for home, Walmart, whatever it came, the retail customers, the retail shippers, got paranoid because around this time there was a lot of political tension, as there is now. It hasn't went away. That political tension created a lot of I guess you would say uncertainty. So a lot of these people, these shippers, these retailers overstocked everything. They're ordering everything. So this is one of the conditions that created the spike for COVID-19, or the COVID-19 pandemic, I should say. Pandemic. When the pandemic happened, it created this spike. So one of them, the retailers are worried about not being able to get their supplies, so they start overstocking, over ordering. The ordering trends completely changed. So they started to order. On top of that, since the government wanted to help out the economy and didn't want to cripple it after they shut it down, they released money. In the same way that they did during the 2008 housing market crash, they released a lot of money. But the difference between the two is in 2008, they released money only to the banks. The banks really didn't need money. The banks don't ever need more money. They need people to actually loan to lend the money to. They want to lend the money out and put the money to work. So when the pandemic happened, this difference is they gave a lot of money to the corporations. To corporations that trickled down to the people that receive wages in forms of wages. So everybody kind of got a raise. A lot of people started making more money as their wages increased, and this created a lot of spending. So a lot of spending started to happen. A lot of people ordering from Amazon, a lot of people buying furniture since they felt like they were stuck in their homes. A lot of remodeling, and people started moving out of the traditional going to the office, and now a lot of people that aren't in the service industry or that are actually more working on computers are more at home. So a lot of that changes started happening. People started ordering stuff. This created a big influx in order, in volume. So now we have all these volumes from the retailers trying to keep their shelves full, from the consumers wanting to spend everything that they had, once the money started trickling in. This type of volume created an environment where there was not enough capacity when it comes to trucks. Okay, so when that happens, there's a battle for bidding for trucks. Who can get the truck? Who can pay more? Who's going to get the capacity? So rates increase. All right. So here we are. Fast forward 2004. Now the downtrend has been happening. Whenever there's a spike, there's always a downtrend. The downtrend has been going on for the past 2 years, and you can see it in a lot of different data when it comes to for example, when there's always a downturn in the trucking industry, there's always mergers happening. There's always closed doors when it comes to carriers closing their doors. Yellow, of course, was one of the largest, and the shutdown of Yellow was already happening, but that type of environment, once everything kind of retreated and the volume went down, and the feds started with their policy control, and they're controlling how much money is actually being lended out, put a lot of pressure on spending and slowed it down, which in turn slowed the volume down. And this same time, whenever the retailers decide to overstock and just fill these warehouses up because they didn't know where their next orders or how their relationships with their counterparts on the other overseas were going to continue or pan out with all the political tension. All this created, okay, now we have people that aren't spending as much. Now we have retailers that aren't ordering as much because now they're trying to lower their inventories and destock everything. So that creates a lower volume environment where there's not a lot of orders coming in. And what happens then? Not only that, we have a war in the Middle East. Now it's spread all over the place. First it started in Ukraine. There was a lot of movement in Ukraine, and then the restrictions going into Russia and all these different trade restrictions. This also affects the trucking industry, because there's going to be items that are not being shipped from Russia to here, that are trades that are not happening with the countries that we're conflicting with, and that in turn lowers volume as well. So this type of environment that's been created with the uncertainty, with the deflation, with the attempt to deflate and reverse everything that's happened when it comes to inflation and how everything started to go, creates the exact opposite of where we were at when it comes to volume. So now with volume very low, we have too many trucks, too much capacity. We're an overcapacitated market. And what that does is lead to lower rates, and people are accepting these rates because they want to stay in business. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, I'm going to be giving you more information about where this market is headed to. And with this particular article that I've read was very, very interesting, because it definitely I'm going to get to your guys' questions and comments here shortly. I appreciate everybody that's on the chat. If you want to hit us up on Super Chat, make sure to hit us up on Super Chat. I'd also like to take this opportunity to let you guys know, if you are in the DFW area, which is Dallas-Fort Worth area, if you're passing through Interstate 20 or 45 coming from Houston, or coming across us through Interstate 20, hit us up. We are ready to service you guys. We offer express service. We also heavy line service as well, express service. We also include a free digital inspection, which is basically the highest inspection that you can get on the road. Text to you, and then you're actually able to access that on your phone, so that you can kind of schedule your maintenance and get a good insight of what your vehicle looks like not even on the road. I mean, I know you guys are working very hard to try to get everything moving. And if you guys have been busy, and I understand the changes that's been going on in this industry has not created a certainty of work or a very consistent amount of work in some sectors. I want to mention. So hit us up, 972-225-3017. We're located at 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas, 75241. I appreciate everybody that's joining us. If you guys want to hit us up with this super chat, make sure to hit us up at super chat. Let us know where you're watching from. If you got any questions or concerns or any video ideas, let us know. I have a couple of videos in the works. We have 2 videos in production right now, and we're also shooting another video tomorrow. So these videos should be getting released in the next week or so. Very informative. Just packed with as much information as we can actually put in a video. So moving right along. So what's going on? Like, what's going on in the trucking industry? Why have we not seen the volume that we've seen in the past? Now, I'm going to tell you, I'll just give you a little bit of a history of how we got into this situation when it comes to offshoring every job possible in the United States. Back in the day, when the industrial age really took off, the United States was the powerhouse, was the most powerful country when it comes to manufacturing. We are still very powerful when it comes to military, but when it comes to manufacturing might, we don't. We depend on a lot of different countries. Now, at that time, when the United States was very strong with production and manufacturing, the ideas of the elites wanted to offshore everything, meaning they wanted to outsource everything overseas where the labor was cheaper and everything could be done cheaper. This type of practice in turn put everybody kind of working against each other or competing against each other. So very competitive for American worker to compete, trying to manufacture the same product that's being manufactured overseas at a very, very minimum price. So whenever that type of practice started to happen, manufacturing started being outsourced overseas. A lot of the manufacturing jobs plummeted here in the United States. And a lot of the practices when it comes to business moved over to financing. So banks started lending more money, and a lot of the work, you would say, or a lot of our most valuable production when it comes to a country, it transitioned from being a manufacturer powerhouse to mostly just finance. Back in the day, it would be engineers running these companies. Now it's mostly financiers, and a lot of times they're just moving money around that doesn't really even help the United States that much. So with all that I just said, now what they're doing when they see that, okay, now I can't trust or I can't depend on our offshoring to always be consistent or always be something that we can lean on, what happens is now we have to reverse all that. Now, and it's already been happening. It's called nearshoring. Now they're nearshoring everything to Mexico. Mexico is becoming the next China when it comes to the amount of well, I wouldn't even compare them to China just because the labor in Mexico is going to be at a higher quality than it would be in China because of the education system and how the Latin culture takes education. Most of the Latin culture takes education very serious compared to the Americans. Some Americans do take education serious, but most of them don't, just because of how our structure is. There's a lot of different things that have been changed to kind of demotivate that type of route, I would say, when it comes to education. So keeping all this nearshoring and reversing all this nearshoring is happening, and it's coming. It's already in the works. But the thing is, it takes time. It takes time for all this reversing to happen when it comes to manufacturing. We're already producing more of our own oil. We're already a natural gas powerhouse. Now with all the nearshoring, excuse my camera for the timing cutting out. Appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. I'll get this color corrected. It looks like I'm a ghost here, but I appreciate everybody that's joined us coming into the summer. So hopefully to get some color. Appreciate everybody that's joined us. So as I mentioned, we're reversing all this reversing all this offshoring. Now, that takes a lot of time. You can't imagine how much effort it takes to relocate manufacturing from offshores to nearshores, which is now going to be Mexico. I saw a video with the president of Mexico that was very interesting, and it talked about, and it calls in line same with what I just mentioned about how Latin culture takes education more serious. I'm Latin based. I'm Mexican. My mother's from Mexico. We didn't have she didn't have the luxury of, schools being available and, of course, getting degrees or whatnot, but not to down people that don't get degrees, because you don't have to have degrees to be successful. But at the same time, when you're raising children and you're looking at the type of, or the differences that they take in academics when it comes to Latin and it comes to Americans are a lot more lax when it comes to Latin America. When it comes to Latin America, just give you one example. When it comes to Latin America and it comes to taking your kids to school, they lock the doors after it is time to start school. They lock the doors. You cannot bring your kid to school no more if you're late. Okay, there's zero tolerance when it comes to being late. In the United States, it's not like that. Okay, in the United States, if you fail a test, you'll get another opportunity. Oh, and also you can see it in sports. They're just giving you the kids won't even be athletic, and they're giving everybody trophies. They're taking away they're taking away the hard work that it takes to actually achieve something and get that trophy. And what that also creates is entitlement. Now everybody's entitled. Everyone's walking around entitled that they've done this and they've done that, and it's just not. I don't really agree with it. So back to the video that I saw with the president of Mexico, and they were basically trying, and you know how these reporters are. These reporters really like to bait questions and really try to make whoever they're interviewing look stupid, which is very rude. I mean, if you're having a conversation with someone in a normal conversation that you meet somebody, and if they're asking you questions that are either rude or just put you really on the spot or inappropriate questions, you wouldn't answer that, or you wouldn't want to even talk to that person. You would probably end the conversation. It's the same with these reporters. So this reporter is baiting questions about how it's Mexico's fault for the United States drug pandemic that they have. Mexico's it's your fault that you're supplying us with drugs. Okay, so what the president's reply was that it wasn't the availability of the drugs that was the problem. It was the willingness of the populace to actually consume the drugs. Okay? Without a consumer, there's not gonna be a business. Okay? So if without a populace wanting to consume these whatever chemicals whoever is going to make, then there wouldn't be that. And what he made the difference is those same chemicals are available in Mexico, but Mexico doesn't have the same type of pandemic when it comes to their populace using using these chemicals because of religion and of their culture, and all in all, more of their, how you would say, their environment. Okay, their environment, which is led by their culture. When they look at drug use, and they look at it with a nasty eye. They look at drug use in Latin America the same as you would look at drug use in America to someone that's on the side of the road, hunched over, not being able to control themselves, whatever. You get that disgust, and that's the same, whatever drug it is, they view that as the same way. Now, that's a culture that they've built over since history. And it's because of religion. Everyone's very religious over there. They take that very serious. And if you look at predominantly Muslim ran countries, they don't have the same issue. They don't have the drug issues. And I'm not saying, hey, religion is our solution, but I'm not saying that it isn't. And I'm not saying that religion or some sort of religious belief, spiritual belief, is not healthy for a country. I don't understand why it's not cultivated more. I don't know why that type of problems are happening where religion is supposed to bring people together. Religion is all, if you look at black and white text, and I'll move on to the next subject, but if you look at black and white text, you can look at the Quran, you can look at the Christian, you can look at the Bible, whatever verse you want to look at. You can look at any religious literature, and it's basically the same thing. Treat your neighbors well, don't do bad things, do your best. All these different things that are similar, but it creates, everyone's just like wearing their religion like it's their football team. Let me get off that. That was a lot of interesting information that I had viewed over the weekend, or that I been kind of haven't talked about in a long time. So with Mexico having that type of culture and not having any type of, they do have drug problems, but not as rampant as the United States. This is what's going on. This relationship with the United States and Mexico and Canada is creating a unity of power that's going to at the end, going to make us again the center of the world when it comes to manufacturing. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time. Okay. It's suspected in 2030, which is always estimated. No one can predict the future, but this is stuff that's already in the works when it comes to semiconductors. We are suspected with our manufacturing plants going to be online in 2030. We are suspected to be able, or expected to be able, to supply 10% of the semiconductors in the globe, in the world, which is a big challenge, a big goal. Right now, Taiwan is the number one. 80% of all semiconductors are made in Taiwan. That's why the earthquake was like a big deal. And that's why China is very interested in just kind of licking their chops on them. But they won't go in. They won't go in. Not just because, it's not the only reason about the United States, because if it was because of the United States, they wouldn't have went into Hong Kong. It's mainly because their population, they don't have enough people. They're not going to have enough people if they go to war with Taiwan. If you look at Ukraine, then the Ukraine war, this is my thoughts on the Ukraine war. It's basically just like all these other wars, proxy wars. If you look at how much everybody's complaining, and I get it, everybody's complaining about the amount of money going into Ukraine, and I get it. Now, when you go back to, and you're measuring a country's performance, you look at their gross production, or their gross domestic production, GDP. Okay, that's how you measure a country's production. When you have a negative GDP in consecutive quarters, which is every 3 months, which is 1 quarter. And when you have a consecutive negative GDP in a consecutive quarter, in consecutive 2 or 3 quarters, you will have what a recession. Okay, and that's considered a recession. Now we haven't hit that. Even though it feels like it. A lot of people probably feel it depending what sector, whatever work or line of work that you're in. If there hasn't been a slowdown, you're probably into more of like lines of credit or insurances type things. Those are types of work that's continuing to move. But stuff that's directly tied to manufacturing and stuff like that, you do see kind of a downturn when it comes to GDP lowering. So the United States have not seen a decrease, and the reason why is that most of the manufacturing sectors that are still producing good numbers are the manufacturing sectors that supply supplies to countries that go to war. So that is one of the reasons why the war is being funded by the United States. The next reason, which goes to the population reason, and I know that I'm here on a rant, but this is just some stuff that I've been reading and I've seen. So when I talk about population and you talk about countries taking over other countries, when you're trying to take over a neighboring country, you're gonna lose men. When you're trying to take over a country that's far away, you're going to lose even more men. It's going to take lives. It's going to take men. So with China already kind of like on the brink of a population issue in the next decade, they're going to have issues with not having enough people. People are not having enough kids. And there's tons of reason why people don't have kids. We can go on and on. That's going to be another live stream on why people aren't having kids. So since China's not having kids and the rest of the country is not having kids, they don't have enough people to go to war. So they're not going to go to war. Okay? Now, with our GDPs being propped up by the manufacturers that are manufacturing the war or manufacturing the supplies to keep the war going on, that's keeping GDP up. That's one reason. Another reason is it is a tactical advantage for the United States, and I'm probably going to need to get off this subject before my channel gets deleted, is another way to deplete Russia's resources. So if long as the war is being propped up, not only is our GDP going to be good or not going into the negative so that we don't fall into a recession, but now we're depleting one of our enemies' resources. We're depleting their ammunition. We're depleting their military. We're depleting their people. So that, all in all, creates reasons more and more why wars continue to go on. So let me get off. Let me get off this. I know that I'm talking about a lot of different stuff, and I should be taking off. I shouldn't have been going off so far, but let's go. Let's get to some of these questions. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. I'm going to be wrapping up this. I don't want to wrap it up too soon. How much time that we gone on today? Let me look at my stream time here. We're about 43 minutes in. David Pollock, how you doing? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you guys from joining us. Sorry about the political rant. James Smith gave me a props. He said my videos are very informative. Thank you very much. I got some new videos coming out about the DD15 and also the damages of low oil pressure, guys. So I'm really excited about these new videos coming out. I got another video that we did on and then this is a delayed release because let me give you the spec and story on this particular truck. We had a Volvo come in with high oil consumption. So we had a Volvo come in with issues. It was a D13 Volvo, and we did a complete rebuild. Now with these different transitions of nearshoring, that's creating supply problems when it comes to quality parts. Okay, so there was a rebuild that was done with a rebuild kit that, let me see if I can give you the exact. I want to say it was a PD. Let me not quote the wrong manufacturer. Basically, it was an aftermarket kit, PIA. It was a PIA rebuild kit. Okay, so this rebuild kit, let me see if I can share this information with you. Okay, so this rebuild kit is an aftermarket kit because they didn't have OEM big build kits. They didn't have them, so we went with a aftermarket PIA. So this particular, let's go ahead and I'll do a share screen with you guys. So anytime we have a warranty problem or warranty, we submit it and we buy all our parts from OEM so that we can warranty parts nationwide. Now, the way warranty works is you still, in most cases, have to pay for the parts to be replaced. But if the warranty comes back as a reasonable cause of the parts being the cause of the malfunction or failure, then you, of course, get the reimbursement. So this particular PIA kit was issued to us, was supplied to us by the manufacturer, Detroit Bruckner's. And this truck was just burning oil. And these are basically the images of what we submit the whole kit and basically try to get it warranted because this failed. Now, when I originally saw this oil burning and all this oil, and these are just basically just images of the piston domes, the piston, how you can see how this top land is just full of carbon buildup. The lands are super just gunked up, both sides gunked up. Now this is just due to excessive oil going into the combustion chamber. You can see all this buildup. Now, I knew that this was the head causing the problem. You can see they also inspect injector patterns. Injector patterns are inconsistent. Most indicate the presence of oil in the combustion chamber. So all these indicators, light scores in the liner, heavy layer of abrasives of soot above the top ring. So this is where they're talking about the top firing ring. You have the firing ring, control ring, and oil ring. They don't have the oil ring on here. But where you can see there is some small wear point at the bottom corner of the skirt, light vertical scoring at the skirt running surface. The top of the second ring indicates proper sealing pattern. So they basically just run like a forensic report on how this particular kit failed. Now, and when they look at the piston, so they're looking at the piston injector patterns. I brought injector patterns up before, but you can see how there's not consistent. They state that there's not consistency there. So my initial thought right away is the head. Okay, there's too much, the seals in the head. Now, if you're not familiar on how a head works, is there's seals that go on the valve stems, which are the valves that open and close for the intake and exhaust. Right away, this is a head problem. Seals are going bad. I did a video on it. I knew that was a problem, right? So, excuse me. So we send the head off. And this is another reason why using machine shops is not going to be always recommended. Because this is not the first time a machine shop told me something was okay and it wasn't. So we send the head off. It was a brand new head from, of course, OEM, from the dealer, so that we can always warranty your guys' work or our work nationwide. So we right away, I'm like, hey, this is the head. We send the head off to the machine shop. Comes back, no, nothing's wrong with the head. And I'm like, BS, man. Something's wrong with that. Where else is this oil coming from? It's not coming from the turbo, which I'm going to be explaining in the video releasing soon, because the intake was dry. The intake manifold was dry from oil. There's nothing coming out of the turbo. The only oil that was coming out was out of the cylinders, out of the exhaust ports of the head. And that's basically indicating that oil is going into the combustion chamber. Now, we did not get the head replaced because the machine shop saying the head was fine. This report that I'm sharing with you here, this long, extensive report, which it's basically checking out liners. In this particular page, it says each liner has a shadow witness mark at the lower end of the stroke that corresponds with the liner O-ring location. This suggests that liner O-ring may have not been properly installed, or there was a buildup of debris in the O-ring grooves. Okay, so this is all it's all systematic, as you can see. Now, if it was a installation proper, because it says it may not be properly installed, or was a buildup of debris in the O-ring grooves that may account for a polishing mark. So I know that it was the debris buildup when it comes to excessive oil, because it's a systematic failure. It's not isolated. Usually if it's an installation problem or an installation error, there's going to just only be one liner or one piston. It's going to be isolated. This is happening, the same pattern of wear is happening on all cylinder liners. So that's an indication to me that it was due to the debris. But the bearings were still well. I mean, you can see they're a little polished, or not too bad, but not great. Bearings show adaptive wear, which is expected. All this type of wear is expected. Now, when they start talking about pistons, this is a lot of good information. It describes the types of damage when it comes to a piston. These types of pistons, or any pistons on the exhaust side, is going to have the most pressure because that's the release side compared to the intake side. So this is a scuffing on both sides, which would definitely be insufficient clearance. This type of failure is going to be from oil starvation. They're just giving us examples about bright spots on the upper. This is the area of the cylinder running surface has higher polish. Areas in which the honing structure is partially unrecognized. There are no significant signs of wear in the piston itself, however. Carbon buildup. Yeah, the carbon buildup is going to cause this type of wear on the liners. So, a long story short, or a longer story shorter, it was the head. And we had the seals replaced once we replaced the rebuild kit, and we didn't go back with a PAI. We are still kind of uncertain. The reports do come back showing that it looks like it was due to excessive oil in the combustion chamber. So we're going to go with what most of the evidence is showing. At the same time, with the part coming from the manufacturer, this is just all insight that you guys should be aware of. So if you're dealing with a shop that had an issue with a part coming from the dealer, it's not uncommon that these parts fail as well coming from the dealer. But it's mostly, as long as your shop is working with you, that's the best. That's probably the best thing that they're gonna do, because a lot of times these warranties are just going to get denied left and right. Back to the chat. I keep getting off the subject, but I'm hoping this information was useful for you. But let's get back to the chat here. Let's see what everyone's talking about. Good stream today. Hope everybody's having a good evening, good Saturday. James Smith, again, another comment. We appreciate you joining us, watching from Connecticut. We got a viewer, Edward West, long viewer of ours, watching from Lubbock. If you got any questions or concerns, make sure to hit us up. Today's broadcast is brought to you by TAT Express. If you're in the DFW area and you're looking for express service, professional express service, we follow all our guidelines, procedures, SOPs is what we call them, to ensure that we don't overlook anything when you come into our shop. We offer free digital inspection. We offer alignments, tires. We also work on light and medium duty and RVs. So if you're in the DFW area and you're looking for service, give us a call, 972-225-3017, 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas, 75241. We are located off of Interstate 20 and Bonneview Road, right by the TA and Premier Truck Group, just south of them, right up the road. Okay, Jimmy's watching us from Florida. FN's watching us from North California. Sorry, I thought that said Carolina. North California is doing well. There's another next thing I wanted to talk about. We need to stay. I want to stay more on the mechanic side, so let's just do that. James says he can hear me well. That was earlier in the broadcast. We got a viewer from Jamaica. Jamaica, you're the greatest. Thank you, man. Hello from NC, North Carolina. There it is, North Carolina. Okay, James, thanks for making sure that when I was trying to get the video looking right. To me, I look like a ghost, but I'll get it right. I think it's the white balance on the camera. So I'll have to adjust that. Damn, I got an M14. Chick says I got an M14 going to be tearing down, has blow by. Well, good luck on it. M14s are a very solid engine. We actually have an M14, brand new, rebuilt M14 Cummins for sale. If you guys are looking for an engine swap for an M14, give us a shout, 972-225-3017. The M14 is a solid engine, man. I mean, it's a really solid engine. It's basically it was the Series 60's closest competitor. Caterpillar, they were all close competitors. Caterpillar is a very strong engine as well. But the M14, one thing that I didn't like is that it had the cam in the center of the engine, which is there would be cam follower leaks, very tough to get to. You would have to remove air compressor and starter to get to the rear ones, and of course the air compressor on the front ones. So that, and also when there's more components moving around in the engine, they're more susceptible to failure, or there's just more things to worry about, like push rods, followers. And those since the cam is in the middle of the engine, they're a pain in the butt to get out and replace the bushings on the cam bushings. So that's definitely very challenging, but very strong engine. That turbo will last forever. It's a simple setup turbo. I mean, a lot of times when the engines started going through their transition, they were putting these they still have these turbo actuators on some models. They have them on Volvos. They also have them on the most modern Cummins, and some on the PACCAR. But what I've noticed is DD15 on their most modern, latest engine, the Gen 5, they don't have any turbo actuator on. There's no turbo actuator. It's just a simplified turbo, because putting any kind of electronic actuator, whether you're running coolant through it or not, is gonna be susceptible to failure, especially when they're that close to that much heat. Something that's bolted directly onto the turbo is experiencing high amount of heat. So it's very challenging to keep that type of stuff going good. Let me get some water down. Sorry about my stickers on my water bottle. My daughter put them on. The next question that I have here was from Son of Mansuman. He said, I did hear harness. Why Cummins never have a buzz test or insight is beyond me. Well, a buzz test is more like kind of like for the small light duties. I do see the buzz test. I think because A buzz test is going to be for a injector, and I could be wrong, but without researching it more, a buzz test is going to be for an injector that doesn't have a plunger style assembly. It's basically going to be a solenoid style injector. Where an N14 and a Series 60 and the older engines do have a plunger style injector where the force of the fuel pressure is being made by the down force of the one of the rocker arms or the injector rocker arm. That's how the injection force is, or injection pressure is being made, because if it's a plunger style. You make my work easier. Oh, I appreciate that comment. Sorry about that cutout. How many are getting ready for the electric trucks? They are coming our way. Show of hands. Well, I appreciate that comment, but I don't see electric trucks happening soon. It already takes a lot of time to I see a lot of investments going into that side, but it takes a lot of time to refuel a truck running on petroleum, running on diesel. Imagine how long it's going to take to do trucks. And I mentioned this in one of my broadcasts before. And in that broadcast, I mentioned about the only way they could probably make that doable is creating battery swap stations. And not only that, I didn't even know that I had this off. Can you believe that? No, it's on. I don't know why it says it's off. Are you guys able to do super chat? I just noticed if that was on or off. We're not there yet when it comes to electric trucks. I mean, we can't even produce enough power without nuclear plants. So we'll need nuclear plants for the amount of power that's going to be needed, because the expected amount of power that's needed for cars is questionable on if we're going to meet those expectations. Without including trucks is going to be, crazy the amount. I mean, each state is going to need a nuclear plant, basically. So we're very far from that. I don't think it's not going to happen. Electric trucks are going to happen someday, but not anytime soon. You can see the trucks that are electric. Most of them that are being used are very, very short distances, and some of them are even being turned into dealers to get sold. There are multiple types of ISXs. Yes, ISX changed their fuel system a couple times, and they changed over to X15. So yeah, there's different types of models, even with the DD15, even with each year, they have to meet different emissions standards. So each change is happening every year, or every few years. The Cummins ISX LPG was a big flop. I can't count how many conversions I have done. Yeah. That's the liquid running off natural gas. Yeah, natural gas is was a good idea. Honestly, I mentioned this before. Electric trucks probably are not going to happen, but I think there's going to be a hybrid of hydrogen, and hydrogen's being used as an option. Like Cummins came out with their most latest engine, and it has an ability to run with hydrogen as well. So once hydrogen is basically helps a cylinder run cooler or cleaner. So it'll burn cleaner and makes it hotter actually. But people are more concerned about storing hydrogen, where liquid LPG or liquid natural gas is way more dangerous, because the way that nitrogen would work is that they would hydrogen. The way that hydrogen would work is they would build a unit on the truck that creates water into the hydrogen, just enough to be able to inject it. And it is going to take tuning in technology, but yeah, nitrogen or liquid natural gas was pretty tough. Cummins is dead, bro. I see no resurrection from those engines. Yeah, I did a video comparing the ISX-15 to a DD-15, and I was more biased towards the Cummins at the time. But with all the different changes, and I see the different failures that happens with Cummins, especially on their heads, and I notice what they're doing when it comes to manufacturing is they're outsourcing just so many different products. This part of the engine is built over here. That part of the engine is built over here. This part of the engine is built over there. And it doesn't create a quality product to me. It doesn't create a quality product. And I think that's where Cummins really started to kind of, they have a lot to prove again. You're right. Darren Allen made a comment and was asking what I was talking about, and that was probably during my political rant. I think the cab over is going to make a comeback in the future. Well, I mean, they're less room, but cab overs are mostly for local stuff. Over the road, if you've ever been over the road, it's very nice to have a lot of space in your truck. So those sleepers are very convenient. And I know the cab overs have a sleeper as well, but they're a lot tighter. And I don't know if you've ever worked on one of those cab overs, but I don't mean to be mean, but cab overs are pieces of junk because they're not kept up, man. They're old. You can't even, most of them don't even have the lift so you can lift the cab. So you're risking your life to even look up under that cab. Thoughts on Canadians' Pride Group filing for bankruptcy? I'm not surprised. I'm not sure who Canadian Pride Group is. If that's a trucking company or in our sector, I'm not surprised. There is going to be and they are doing it. They're trying to decapacitize because we're in an overcapacitized market that some trucks need to come off the road until we have all this manufacturing online, which is going to take a few more years. And I wanted to circle back around the predictions about the United States, Mexico, and Canada being the center of the world again. Check out the history of China in the 1830s, 1850s in regards to their addiction issues, and tell me if you see a similarity in regards to the drug topic. That's a good, I would look into that. One of the reasons cat trucks didn't make it. Well, they stopped going because of the all the regulations. Not only that, Cat stopped doing on highway, and they're still banging it out. They're still one of the strongest Fortune 500 companies out there because they have all the off-road work, all the mining work, all the agricultural. They're very, when you look at indices. I don't know if I'm saying this right, but it's just whenever you're trying to gauge markets, the health of a market, they include cat stock because cat is that large. They have that much exposure to the globe when it comes to pretty much every industry out there. I just ordered the OTR Diagnostics Professional for my 2020 Cascadia with the DD15. What are your thoughts on an owner-operator having one of these scanning tools? Let me get some blood in my ear first because these headsets. All right. So, okay, so are you okay, so the OTR, the question I got here from Thunderstorm, it's a good question, it's a good chat. hit me up on Super Chat if you guys are feeling generous. So an OTR diagnostic tool, if you're not familiar with those, they're being advertised and marketed for you guys, and those are pretty much going to be used for temporary. They're ideal for temporary, because if you try to use this and say, for example, you got a light or a fault that continues to come up. This fault continues to come up, so you're using your OTR diagnostic toy to clear the codes, okay? So what are you going to do with clearing the codes? You're going to reset the timer, okay? So because some of these ECMs have timers on how many times this fault needs to happen before I trigger a light. So if this fault's already happened multiple times and I clear the fault, now I'm resetting that timer. I didn't fix the problem. The problem is still there. I just reset the timer for the computer. So the computer is not recognizing that I just reset your counter. Now I have to reset the amount of faults that I just triggered to let the operator know that, hey, something's going on. Now you reset it, and what ends up happening is you're not fixing the root cause of the problem. That type of tool could be useful if you are wanting to use it as a lifeline, if you're trying to get somewhere and your truck's derated. Now, if your truck has an audible noise in the engine and you're losing oil pressure, or something really major is going on, something audible on the top end, you don't want to bypass anything and keep moving anyway. But as an OTR tool, you could possibly reset to get you to a location to fix the problem, not to use it as a temporary fix for every time the truck check engine light comes on. You want to just reset the timer, because all you're doing is prolonging the actual problem, and you're going to cause you even more damage. Because if it is something that's causing problems upstream in the engine, the longer you prolong it, the more damage can happen over time. So I'm not a big fan of diagnostic scanners to just clear codes and ignore the fault. I am a fan of using a diagnostic tool to be able to get you to a location safely off the road for non codes that would damage the engine. If it's audible and you get clicking, clankling, clackling, whatever, don't do it. I mean, don't do it. Don't do it. So the next thing, it's okay, a little Joe, just joking. One of the reasons cat trucks didn't make it. It's okay. Who are you talking to? I don't know I don't know what that comment's about. Next comment. I just got a Cummins motor rebuild. I drove it 10,000 miles. My question is it doing okay? Okay, so you just got the motor rebuilt and you drove 10,000 miles. You're asking me if it's okay. Now, most of the time, if you have a failure after a rebuild, it's going to be fast. It's going to be like within 1,000 miles, within 500 miles. If it's due to contamination or workmanship. So if there's errors in the workmanship, or is it super contaminated with a lot of dirt, those types of failures are usually going to be noticeable within 500 miles or 1,000 miles. You're currently said that you drove 10,000 miles. So I would say you're okay. Keep checking your oil. At the end of your oil change, when you come up to your oil change, do an oil analysis, and start keeping track of the oil analysis and see what type of contaminants are there in your oil. The oil is the bloodline of your truck. So any indications of any internal wear is going to show up in the oil or any contamination. So you are past
whether or not you're going to have any workmanship or any failures due to workmanship or contamination, I would say you're okay. That doesn't mean go in there and put your foot all the way down to the floor and try to push this truck like you're about to compete somewhere. No, I would still drive it as normal. Drive it as if you don't have. Oh, okay. I got me a super chat. I appreciate the super chat, Frankie. Para las pupusas, bro. Okay, thank you. I like pupusas. Just one question there. If the ECM is protected, is the software he's using can be bypassed? Now, no. If the software is being protected, can the software be bypassed? It cannot be bypassed. The only way that they're trying to bypass it, this is not even bypassing it. What they're doing is rewriting the ECM to an older program. So what they'll do when it comes to, and I'm pretty sure you're asking for modifications to the after treatment systems, which we don't do or promote. I actually tell you guys to steer clear of these because of this. These programs, these softwares on these ECMs are being written, of course, by the manufacturers and coded, and access to these reprogramming parameters or the options to create a modified tune without damaging the engine is not available to the public. Okay, it's not available. They don't even have the software. So what they're doing is they turn around and rewrite the program. I'm going to erase this data. This is what they're doing. They erase the data, the most current data on the ECM, and then they upload an older version of the data. Now, these engines are tuned to take in all these different parameters. Okay, a lot of these engines, the modern engines, are actually programmed to run with an EGR. An EGR is going to make a cylinder hotter because it's an EGR is recirculating the exhaust gases back into the intake to cut down on emissions. Okay, so when that happens, that creates more heat in the cylinder. Now, ECMs on modern engines are being programmed and tuned to compensate for this higher heat. So now you have a program that's older, that's not taken into consideration that my cylinder can run hotter or will run hotter once I cut off the EGR. Okay, so now I'm cutting off the EGR. In your mind, you may be thinking, okay, well, now my cylinder is going to run cooler. Now, along with these tunes, what they're going to be doing is dumping more fuel into the cylinder. When that happens, that in turn creates a higher temperature in the cylinder. When that happens, and the temperature's increased higher than what the actual cylinder is designed to keep, that higher temperature is what causes the damage. That causes burnt valves. That causes, once a cylinder is heated up, the piston and metal expands, causing scuffing on the liners. When that happens, then you got high blow by. So a lot of these attempts to rewrite the software or bypass the software are all hack deletes. These are all hack attempts to bypass the system. But a reason why we always advocate against it, because down the road, all this is doing is dumping more fuel, adding more air, creating more power, of course. You feel the power right away. Oh, man, my truck is so much stronger with this delete. But you're killing the longevity of the truck because it's not designed to run for that long with that higher cylinder pressure. So, in turn, you have damage on the cylinder kit, damage to the head, and really, when people are saying, oh, no, what do you mean my truck is going to last longer? No, we're looking later on down the road. I took apart an engine that had nearly 1,000,000 miles on the DD15, and you're going to be surprised of what we found in the engine at 1,000,000 miles. Like the engine looked really well, and this is a video that I'm putting together. I'm hoping to have this released in the next couple of weeks. But no, I appreciate para las papusas y la comida y todo que me estás pasando, pero no puedes hacer esas cosas a la computadora porque no está garantizado que se va a aguantar mucho tiempo. These hack deletes are being done from people out of the United States. The programs are being sold to whoever is willing to connect to these computers, and these hackers will rewrite the software. They will do it remotely. So they will mail you a laptop so that you can connect everything up, cook to the internet. They log in, they download the file, they rewrite your ECM, then you send them back. Oh, okay, your delete's fine. They can't be traced. Whenever it's time to, who did this for you? Oh, well, no. Oh, where's the warranty at? Well, okay, there's no warranty either. Okay, so what ends up happening is these hack deletes get duplicated and duplicated and duplicated and sold. Oh, I can eliminate your system for $1,300. Oh, I can charge you $1,500. I mean, the system's a $10,000 system, and you trying to bypass it with a very cheap delete can only cause more problems in the long run. Old Young, I appreciate your super chat. Old Young's got me a super chat here. Appreciate you guys. Frankie, I hope I answered your question. I do see these deletes happen a lot, these hack deletes, and I do see the failures that come in. There are trucks that last long that may be all right, but the risk is kind of like rolling dice. You really don't know what you're getting. So since it's illegal, it's very hard for someone to create a quality product when they have to turn around and hide or shut down that business every time they get caught and reopen it and try to get these tunes done right. No, it's not available. The right equipment is not available. The right hardware is not available. All these different components and tools are not available to create an engine that doesn't need an after treatment system. Okay, so Old Young's question, super chat. Hit me up on super chat. I appreciate the super chat. Guys, if you got any additional questions, hit me up on super chat. So his question is, hey, Tat, I have an interview coming up for an entry-level diesel mechanic position. Do you have any advice on how I can use my 8 years of Class A CDL experience in the interview to help me stand out? Your willingness to learn is probably going to show more than your experience. Don't expect to go in there and if you're entry-level, you're going to get entry-level pay, okay? So, and be okay with that. Be okay with coming in with entry-level. Okay, and soak up everything that you're willing to learn. If you have a clean CDL record, that's probably something you can bring up. Hey, I have a clean CDL record. If you did your pre-trip and post-trip inspections, if you're familiar with equipment, if you're familiar with trucks, explain that in your interview. Present yourself well. If you're going in as a mechanic, there is a stigma that I don't like when it comes to mechanics that, they have this kind of like lax type of attitude of slacking or not being very presentable. Being a technician or a mechanic or technician is a profession. So you should act like it. You should act as if it's a profession. You should go in there as if it's a profession. And if you're serious about it and you want to learn, they're going to see that. As an interviewer, as an employer, somebody that has the willingness to learn and that can get it done and that can pick it up, learn it, get it done, Next thing, okay, all right. Oh, I can see the initiative. Getting there early, before time starts, not leaving like right at the time when your clock is up. I mean, cleaning up, taking care of your equipment, not griping about what type of jobs they're going to give you. Because if you're an entry level, you're going to get tires, you're going to get oil changes, and you're going to be there for a while. If they don't move you up, at least you have PM, preventive maintenance, which is very useful in any shop. And then you can start exploring. Hey, I want to move up, but I mean it's not going to happen fast. Okay, if they have some type of training program to help you move up, then that's going to be useful. Some people in our trade and in most trades will not be as generous with their information as most people like expect them to be, and a lot of times those people are worried about their job being taken from them. Where I've learned in my experience with life and mostly in the military is what I know. I want my whole team to know. I want everybody in my shop to know, because I want them to know more than me, because being in a shop where only one person knows it all is going to be a very lopsided shop, and when you're going, for example, if you go to war, and I know that war is not a good topic to talk about, or if you're going as a team into a game, you want to be able to have your talent across the whole team. That's going to create a stronger team. Okay. So what I would say is soak up all the information possible. You're coming in as an entry level. You're going to be treated as entry level. Take it. Take the humiliation. Show that you can shine through it. Show that you can still be a professional through it. Soak up every aspect of what you can, how it's operated, what they're doing, where they're not doing, what they can improve on. If you are working on a particular engine, find out what engines you're working on, research that engine, find out how you can learn as much as you can on that engine. The 8 years of a CDL Class 8, that's great. That's great. But when it comes to working on trucks, it's a whole different ball game depending on what shop you're going to be in. Summer's coming up. Most shops are not air conditioned, so you're going to be dealing with the elements of the heat and the cold. It's a whole different monster. You be patient, and good luck, man. Good luck. Thank you for sharing that, and I appreciate that super chat. And you'll do well, man. You do well if you're showing initiative. You'll do well. Being a diesel technician or mechanic is not easy. Any profession is not going to be easy. Any profession, whether you're framing a house, whether you're being a plumber, any trade is going to take effort, and any trade should be handled as a professional. And you should treat everything as a profession. Okay. When I try to go into a job, I try to be very professional when it comes to the how we handle the job, and we try to do that across everything that we work on. So, welcome to the industry, old young. Got another guy from Tampa here. Thank you for the super chat, 1999. I appreciate that. Got some good super chats today. I'm glad that that's working. Tampa's question in his super chat, and if you have a question and you want to get it highlighted, hit us up on super chat, or hit me up on super chat. So Tampa says, hey, I bought a 2020 Volvo D13. I've run 30,000 miles on it, and it has a new, and it's never asked me for a regen. And the soot and ash levels are always low. Is this normal? Okay. So this particular truck is a 2020 Volvo D13 that this viewer bought, and he's saying he's ran 30,000 miles and it's never asked him for a regen. Now, it's never asked you for a parked regen. if you are spending a lot of your time on the road, if you are having long drives, it is ideal for the regeneration process to happen as a active regeneration, which is while you are driving. That is basically what these engines are designed for. The only time it should ask you for a regen is if you don't have enough drive time on the highway to complete a successful active regen. That's the only reason why it would ask you to do a regen, a parked regen or a forced regen, is if your soot is building up enough where, oh, I am not driving enough on the highway. It's not doing a regen long enough on the highway so that I don't get soot build up. It's asking me for a regen. So if you are concerned about that, you can, and there's no check engine lights. I would definitely be okay with how many miles are on the truck. I know you said you've ran 30,000 since you bought it, but how many miles are on it? Because Volvo recommends at 450,000 miles that the DPF filters be replaced, not cleaned, but replaced by an OEM clean filter or OEM filter swap. Okay, DEF filters, which is a filter in the DEF liquid or the fluid, is going to be recommended at 150,000 miles. Anytime you buy a used truck, and I'm doing a video soon, and it's going to be, I've already titled it and everything. I just got to shoot it. And this video is basically going to be giving you 5 tips on buying a used truck. In those tips that I'm going to be sharing with you is going to be the vehicle history. Okay, vehicle history is very important. Thank you for answering my question. He says he has 650,000 miles. Okay, at this point, and your additional question was, what do I recommend to extend the life of the after treatment system? At 650,000 miles, okay, so after 450,000 miles, that filter should have been replaced. So knowing the history, and if that filter has been replaced, that's good. Okay, if it hasn't been replaced, I would plan to replace that DPF filter sooner rather than later. I would do it before you start actually having problems if you find out in fact that it has not been replaced. DEF is the filter that goes into your liquid DEF. That needs to be replaced every 150,000 miles. Overhead valve adjustments, which is adjusting the valves overhead to ensure your fuel consumption and the performance of the engine is running well, is also recommended at 500,000 miles and then every 200,000 miles after that. Okay, let me know on the Volvo 2020 that we're talking about if you have noticed any kind of problems with air leaks or starting or anything like that. Air leaks are very important. It was owned by a good fleet, so I'm assuming it was replaced. Okay. Now, what you can probably do is have a shop look at it to ensure that that filter's been replaced. They can use PTT, which is a premium tech tool, which is the Volvo version of their software, and you're able to look at the life of the filter. And also you can do a regen and look at the parameters. I know that you can probably do a forced regen on your console, but that's not going to give you any insight. Whenever you use PTT or you use the when you use the software that's provided by the manufacturer and you run a force regen, it's basically kind of like a performance test. You're able to see different parameters and pressure, all this. One thing I would like to mention about the fleets, you said you bought this truck from fleets. Okay, one thing I would like to mention about fleet trucks is that when fleets look to save on expenses, the first thing that they're going to save or first thing that they cut is maintenance, which is, okay, why would they do that? Why would they cut maintenance if all it's going to do cost them more money. No, it won't, because most of the time these fleets are trading these trucks in around 500 to 600,000 miles, and because they're still getting a very good amount of value out of this trade-in and trading in for newer models. So when I talk about saving on maintenance, expenses on maintenance, this is what they're doing. They'll prolong oil changes by months, okay? Where manufacturer, if you look at a owner's manual, they already are recommending extended oil changes. I would definitely, if you decide to follow an extended oil change, definitely do an oil sample so you can at least check the blood of that. Like I mentioned before, the oil is the lifeblood of your engine. So doing an oil sample at the end of your oil change, not at the beginning, but at the end where it has the most miles on it, it's going to be able to collect the most amount of contaminants, if there is any, in the engine whenever you do an oil sample at the end of the oil change. Whenever you're doing that, you're definitely going to be finding out what's going on with it. So fleets are doing that. They're extending the oil changes. They're turning the trucks in whenever these major maintenance items are due, like the DPF filter needs to be replaced at 450,000 miles. You can look this information up online. You can go 2020 D13 Volvo maintenance intervals, maintenance, owner maintenance. You're going to see that at 450,000 miles, it recommends you replace that filter. Another thing that's overlooked very often, guys, is the air dryer. Okay, the air dryer and also the air filter. Air filters can damage engines very easily because it's called dust out. It's basically dust goes inside the intake by a dirty air filter, especially if you're running into dusty areas. And what happens is it acts like sandpaper up against the cylinder walls, and it can cause scuffing. It can also make its way into the oil and scratch up your bearings, scratch up and cause internal engine wear, low oil pressure, and just cause an engine to go out faster. Back to the air dryer. Air dryers are important on every semi truck because, of course, air systems is what controls brakes. Okay, it's not like an automotive vehicle where your brakes are being controlled hydraulically. No, brakes on a semi truck are 100% controlled by air. It's not air over hydraulic, it's strictly air. So that makes it even more important, because if brakes are lost on the semi and is going down the road very heavy, it's not able to stop. So replacing air filters are important, not only because they're the heart of the braking system, but they also do a lot of different. Air is being used in a lot of different functions on the truck, especially on a Volvo. What I've seen is the top controller of the transmission ends up getting clogged up with all this contaminants, whether it's with, most of the time it's condensation that just gets so gunked up in the system that it ends up making its way to all the air fittings, making air leaks, making it to the transmission, causing transmission problems, shifting problems, having to replace controller housings. It's just a mess. So replace that as well. And I hope that helps. No problems at all. It has been a beast so far. No check engine lights at all. And the brakes look brand new, like they were on top of their maintenance. That's good. That is good. And I'm glad you're not having problems. So at 650,000 miles, okay, look at that maintenance look at the maintenance intervals. Make sure all that's been done. Overhead, what's your fuel consumption look like? Okay, if you got solid miles per gallon, that's going to be your baseline health indicator. If that starts to go down, you start noticing, oh, I got something going on with my truck. I would still run these preventive maintenance measures when it comes to overhead valves, changing belts, changing air filters, changing your oil on time. These are all good preventive maintenance. That's basically you're preventing a problem from happening. So that's why preventive maintenance is important, because you want to prevent a breakdown from happening, or a problem, or an unexpected problem from happening. So preventive maintenance is very important. I appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. I appreciate those super comments or those super chats. I definitely appreciate everybody that's joined us. Oh, Frankie, you had some other stuff that you had said earlier. I didn't notice that. Frankie had to ask, I did an overhaul with those things, and the only thing bad about is the O-rings on the liners. They're so fragile when you heat. With the heat I pass. Yeah, well, any O-rings, when you're rebuilding, Frankie says he overhauled the N14 and he had problems with the O-rings and they broke. Probably the piston O-rings is what you're probably talking about, the piston rings. And piston rings can be like that. I've broken some before. What's helped me is lubricating. Like what I would do is I would assemble the piston, make sure the piston's assembled, and make sure all your rings are lined up properly and the gaps aren't lined up and the gaps aren't like in line. I would dip the whole piston head in oil and to lubricate it. And then when I mentioned the manuals, online manuals and online with the softwares that I recommend that you buy, the online manuals are going to give you tool numbers and everything that you need. So every engine is going to have like their own piston ring compressor installation tool. So those are very, very helpful. In any engine that we rebuild, some people will use like their makeshift piston ring compressor to kind of get that piston in there. But if you go by the manual and the proper procedures and buy the tools that they have from Cummins or Detroit or whoever the manufacturer is, that makes the job so much easier, especially when it comes to those crucial installation procedures like piston installing the pistons. Because if you're using, and Frankie, I'm not saying you're not using OEM tools, because you could probably still have a problem if you did, but I'm just kind of speaking off of my experience. I've used non-OEM tools to install pistons and I've had problems. And now we use OEM only tools. Cummins has their piston ring compressor tool to install piston is very unique. It's kind of like, it's like a I'll see if I can do a video on it, but it's kind of like some, like here is like the compressor part of the tool, and then there's the handles on it. So then you would put the piston in and you put the handles on it and kind of compress the piston in, and you can do this on the vise. You can put the piston, dip the piston in oil, put the piston on in the vise, put some towels around the vise so you don't damage the rod, hold the rod down, put the tool and crimp the piston rings, and then you grab the piston, and now you're able to actually install it, put it in there, push the piston down. Very easy. Put the oil on your liner, boom. Since we've been following proper procedures and using the tools called out in the manuals, online manuals, we have had zero breaks with piston rings and piston installations. The only problem we've had is with parts, and now we're really keeping an eye on that type of stuff, because if we have failures with parts coming from the manufacturer, it's very tough, very tough. We got another super chat from Tampa. Thanks for another $4.99. I'm using Mobile Dell back every 10,000 miles. Okay. You could probably go. That's 10,000 miles is. You could probably go a little bit longer. If you want to do an oil sample, do an oil sample. To do I got a question on the super chat. To do a super chat, all you got to do is, let me see how you do it. Guys, if you know how to do it, welcome to live chat. Okay, so right next to the chat box, so right next to the text where it says where you're going to text it, there's the smiley face, and then right next to that is the dollar sign, kind of like the image of a dollar. That's where you do the super chat, and then you go, you hit super chat. It gives you the option to super chat. Stacks chucking, that's how you do a super chat. Go to the chat box that you just typed into, and then you'll see the dollar sign. So Tampa has another follow-up comment. That's a super chat comment. Thanks again. Thank you for your super chat. He says he's using Delvac every 10,000 miles. Honestly, that's pretty low. You could probably extend that more, possibly 15 to 20. But if you want to try 15, do an oil sample. Check your lubricity. Check how much soot is in your oil, and you can get a better idea. Or if you can still do 10,000, but I was just trying to save you a little bit of money. Do an oil sample. If you're still showing life in that oil, extend that oil a little bit longer, maybe 15. Do another oil sample. If the oil sample is still running very solid, oil sample is going to tell you how your lubricity is. Now, the lubricity, excuse me if I'm not pronouncing that exactly correct, but that is the properties of the oil being able to continue to lube the engine. If that viscosity goes low, that's basically what is actually that's what is labeled as in a oil analysis report is viscosity. So the viscosity is the amount of is basically the way that the ability that the oil still has to lubricate the engine. So if the viscosity level is still within specs, your soot, you don't have high soot levels, because with these new modern engines, they are collecting more soot in the oil, creating dirtier oil. That's why I'm not for extended oil change intervals, because a lot of the times they're not factoring in how much soot is being collected in the oil. So all this is being is being looked at whenever you're doing an oil analysis. So 10,000 miles is pretty safe. You could probably go a little bit longer, do an oil analysis, and go from there. Appreciate again that super chat. Frankie has a question. I used engine oil softener, the ring for the hour, then proceed. Maybe my problem, I run with 50-50 water coolant, literally. Okay. You said you run with 50-50. You said you put something on the rings. I just use regular oil whenever we assemble an engine, just clean oil. 50-50 coolant, and that happens. The only thing I don't like about 50-50 coolant is you might as well get coolant already pre-mixed, because if not, you can't use regular water whenever you're doing 50-50 mix, because there's so much minerals in regular tap water that could accelerate corrosion inside the engine. So I would definitely use a mix that's already ready to use. Don't newer trucks change their oil at 50,000 miles? Ghosts. That is something that I was just mentioning. Is a lot of the newer modern engines and the owner manuals suggest that you go 50,000 miles on your oil change. Now, oil change intervals at 50,000 miles is very high. If you look at the fine print on where you find this information, it's basically going to say as well that it is good practice to have a oil analysis program in place if you're doing prolonged intervals as such as 50,000 miles. The reason why they state that is because they know that there is going to be more buildup in that oil. 50,000 miles, okay, if you can do 50,000 mile intervals and you run an oil analysis and your oil is all within specs, nothing is there to raise any red flags after running that many miles, and nothing's going to be putting your engine in danger, okay. But I would not run that type of extended oil change intervals without a oil analysis program in place. That's what I would definitely do in something reason like that. The reasons dealers struggle to fix trucks is because they have a high turnaround rate and they refuse to send techs to training, and it's being a flat rate system makes it really hard for young techs. Well, I don't know why the dealers are having. I know that it can be challenging. I know it can be challenging. I have a question, bro. Sounds add to. I asked what 10W engine oil. Never heard of it, but I would like input. Frankie's telling Frankie, a lot of these different engines, modern engines, are having to meet stricter and stricter emission standards, which is forcing these engineers to produce engines, just forcing these engines to be more productive. If you look at a diesel engine, a lot of the energy, and to answer your question about the engine weight, there are new engine weight oils coming out. The 10W is out. There's lighter oils coming out as well, and they're doing this because of the differences in the engine. Every time that they make changes in engines, of course, they're going to have different requirements in oil. Lighter oils are going to, as long as they're creating that viscosity that's needed in the engine and not creating damage, they will start going with lighter oil, because they did notice that the oil, when the crankshaft is turning, the oil splashing in there, the weight of the oil can affect the output of the engine. So lighter oils are nicer. Lighter oils can lubricate higher places faster. So these different changes are becoming just what modern engines are looking like. But yes, I notice it. But ensure, what I would recommend is, if you are interested in changing your oil type, ensure that you look over your owner's manual and make sure that you're within the specs of the oil that's recommended for that truck, because there's different ratings that are rated by it's called API, and they pretty much rate oils. So if every model engine has a specific rating that's required when it comes to oil, so make sure you check out your oil API ratings. I haven't I'm still taking questions. I'm actually looking over comments that's come up at the beginning of the show. VLAD says my wife is noisy. Adam, that's hard to happen, brother. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. It's getting worse and worse. It is. It is getting worse. It's hard to. I honestly wish we could work together. We'd probably be a lot further as a world. I mean, think about it. If somebody's looking in on us, and I don't know, it's just a lot of hate. How much should it approximately cost me to get both axles aligned? How often should they be aligned? Thunderstorm's asking how much does it cost? A 3-axle alignment, which would be the steer. Anytime you do an alignment on a truck, I would definitely run a 3-axle alignment. Don't ever just run the rear axles. Prices vary, and how often you do it depends on how old your truck is. If you have a truck that has worn suspension, it will not hold an alignment as long as something with exceptional suspension. Also, it depends on your road conditions. If you're off-road a lot and you're really kind of going and bending bending the chassis and stuff like that, that can cause some problems to happen and your alignment to come off as well. Engine after the overhaul, and I run the engine with water and coolant. Temp went to 250 and blew the O-rings of the liner. Being a truthful guy here. Dang. Frankie, sorry to hear that. Frankie says that after he rebuilt that engine, it got hot and blew an O-ring. Oh man, that sucks. Yeah, that definitely not good. But I appreciate you sharing, and I appreciate you joining us today. I did try to go over everything that I outlined. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. I'm gonna go ahead and end this chat, man. End the stream. Had a great stream. Good super chats, good questions. Thank you for everybody for joining us. Make sure to like and share this video if you know that somebody that's in this industry that can use this information as well. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel as well. I got some new videos coming out. If you're in the DFW area and if you would like to get service, 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas 75241. You can also call us at 972-225-3017. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Be safe out there. And until next time, I will talk to you again. Thanks again for watching.